All right. Well, your New York Knicks found a way to get the win tonight. Sunday here. They had a 6 o'clock game tonight. The New York Knicks playing the Cleveland Cavaliers. Donovan Mitchell having a home game here. And, Jeff and I are backstage. We're talking about this game, and I think a lot of us are pretty surprised as the Knicks grab a 92-81 home victory. The New York Knicks now snap a 5-game home losing streak. And you talk about, dialing the clock back to the Mickey Mouse year, where the Knicks were a top defensive team. Tom Thibodeau made some changes tonight, and the defense certainly got better as the Cleveland Cavaliers shot 35% and only 23% from three. Going into tonight, we had the injury report where Jarrett Allen missed the game. And Donovan Mitchell, I think that was the headline tonight in terms of the opponent. The Knicks had a much, I guess you can say, much needed victory for Tom Thibodeau. And Jeff, man, where do we begin here? The Knicks needed this win. They're coming off an embarrassing game last night. And I think CP took the hit for the team as he did the solo post game yesterday. And we came in today we thought we were going to come into a different result, but they pulled off the win. And when I look around, it was a good win, in my opinion, because of the circumstances. At the end of the day, the Knicks need to win. This head coach needs the team to win. And they did that tonight. Now, it was a very, very interesting game because I think they just called another travel as the team, the referees were in a different mode. I don't even know what mode you want to call it, as they emphasized the travel. I think it was, like 13 travels, and the season high in the NBA was 11. And so, it was a very, very weird game, a lot of sloppy basketball, both ways. And, I thought that, I don't know what to make of this game, to be honest with you. When I look at, what did we learn tonight? I'm interested to hear your thoughts about this team, about this game, because, it's one of those games where you ask yourself, is this a way that you can sustain it? Can the Knicks sustain this type of play? Can Tom Thibodeau duplicate this effort by the Knicks into their next game against the Hawks on national television? Because the Knicks shot 17% today from three, shot 40% from the field. And so, listen, we'll get into player-to-player performances. We'll get into some of the headlines. We'll get into some of the interesting storylines of the team moving forward. But, Jeff, what's your immediate thoughts on this game? 92-81, low scoring. What do you make of what you saw tonight?
Yeah, JD, a really, really weird game, man. You hit it on the head, especially in the first quarter. Just a lot of sloppy play. The refs didn't forget their whistle, for sure. Like you said, 13 travel calls. I think RJ had at least 2 or 3 on his own. In the fourth quarter, I thought when Randle missed the wide open 3, and then Tibbs got a tech about maybe a minute or 2 later. Honestly, man, I saw the sky falling a little bit. I thought, listen, here it goes. We had the collapse in the third in the previous day against the Mavericks. I said it's too good to be true. But as Clyde always says, man, persistence personified. I got to give these Knicks credit. I thought we dealt with adversity way better than we have in the past. There were plenty of moments where the Cavs hit a shot where, Mitchell got a dunk or Garland got a 3, and you felt the momentum start to shift a little bit. But, give the Knicks credit. They answered the bell. There was some key shot making here and there. Brunson, you got to give Randle credit as well. As you pointed out earlier, Jarrett Allen is out for this game. So I wanted to see, from a game plan standpoint, are we just going to continue to hoist up threes and not make them? Or are we going to drive? Are we going to get to the rim? Because the Cavs didn't have their top rim protector. And I thought we did a pretty good job of that. I thought IQ specifically did a really good job of that. I thought Randle did a decent job of that. I think we only shot about 29 for the game. And then, honestly, it sounds cliche, but it was really a whole team victory. Isaiah Hartenstein, a player who's been, a little maligned recently, I thought he played really well. I thought the fourth quarter, the beginning of the fourth quarter, where we essentially had our bench out there, I think it was Deuce, Grimes, IQ, Obi, and Hartenstein. They were playing against Mitchell and Garland. It wasn't a lot of minutes, but we held it down and we kept the lead until the starters came in. So overall, a really good team victory and a much, much needed victory, like you said, for Tom Thibodeau, who I think escapes by the skin of his teeth some of the heat that has been building slowly but surely under his seat for the majority of this season. So a very good victory, but I think the key question, and we'll probably get into it a little bit more during the show, like you said, is it sustainable? Is it something that we can build on?
Yeah, and you mentioned there a change there in the first quarter. The game started, both teams were struggling to shoot, and then you look at the 5 minute and 15 second mark of the first quarter. I couldn't believe my eyes. You saw Deuce McBride and IQ hit the scorers table, and they were the first guards off the bench. Now, the question here is this a one game thing with Derrick Rose? You're in the second of a back to back. And I think that was a key decision there because, as you mentioned, they were able to sustain that defensive effort by bringing two, solid defensive guards. And, CP was talking about yesterday wanting to see Cam, Grimes, and IQ as a trio together. But tonight we saw IQ, Deuce, and Grimes. So we were able to see some type of defensive resistance there with those three. And I thought that was key in the first quarter. You saw when they were able to switch, as you mentioned, being able to have one of these top defensive guards on the opposing perimeter players, I thought was key. What do you think about that dynamic in terms of Deuce getting minutes? Do you think this is this something that you are in favor of? Do you think this is something that the Knicks should continue to go with, moving forward?
I don't know if specifically I want Deuce getting those minutes, but I do feel confident in saying that I don't necessarily want Derrick Rose getting those minutes. And again, I said it on the last post game that I was on. I think at this point it was a week ago. I love Derrick Rose. I have a lot of respect for what he's accomplished in this league. But I don't know that he fits what we're doing on this team. And when he's in there, I think we have a couple of players that can do what he can currently do. So I would much rather see IQ filling those minutes. You want to give them to Deuce, fine. I thought he played okay. Offensively, I don't think he gave you much, but like you said, defensively, he was a presence out there for sure. And then I think when they ran drop coverage, as a guard who's trailing the ball handler, he did a good job of forcing people off the 3-point line, which was clearly an emphasis today. I mean, teams have come into the Garden, they've just rained threes at will. And I think as a team, the Cavs did not shoot well in general, but I'm sure from three they didn't, and I think Deuce was a part of that. So ultimately, I think we got to figure out what's going on with Derrick Rose. But as long as somebody else, whether it's IQ or Deuce is getting those minutes, I think we'll be good there.
Right. And as you mentioned, Deuce goes 0 of 4 from the field. All four shots were three-pointers. And it's strange with him, he was a +8 because in the G League, he kills it from the perimeter in terms of shooting, but he has not yet been able to translate that to the NBA level. Now, Donovan Mitchell tonight, he's 8 of 22. He only has 23 points. 2 of 11 from three, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, has 3 turnovers. But I think in 40 minutes, the 8 of 22 and 2 of 11 from three is the key here. Before the game, going into it, I mean, Jeff, you talk about setting the stage. for this guy to put the nail in the coffin on this franchise after what happened last night. I mean, you talk about he has all the headlines. You're at the Garden, before the game in his pregame on the Cavs network, he talked about how he's never had this many people, family and friends, attend a game of his since his rookie year. And when I saw that, when I heard him say that, I said, "Yep, this is a 50 burger coming tonight." I mean, because he has everybody. I mean, he's gonna be motivated to kill us, and being able to hold them off like that. Grimes playing the great defense on him, and then you saw Deuce. You know, I'm surprised. I don't know about you. I'm surprised that even with that, he was able to struggle the way he did, because now maybe all the hoopla and the hype leading up to it got him thinking too much. You're trying to adjust all these tickets, all the off-course stuff to get into the game, the Garden. So what do you think about the job the Knicks did on Donovan Mitchell in his performance tonight?
I thought Grimes was fantastic. The only thing I'm going to say that I'm not going to necessarily give the Knicks a ton of credit with is that first quarter, man, and we talked about it a little bit. It was so messy. And honestly, I really wasn't too impressed with what the Knicks were doing on defense. Like, I saw what they were trying to do, but the Cavs missed a ton of open shots. Like, really, and both teams weren't shooting particularly well. But, as the game, as people start to get into the flow of things, Grimes was somebody who I thought clearly took it upon himself personally to say, "Listen, this is a shot, a matchup that I want." And I thought they did it. I thought they did a really decent job. I thought they made him a little bit uncomfortable here and there. They kind of flashed the occasional double here and there. They didn't run drop coverage all night. There were some little switches here and there, but nothing really crazy from a schematic standpoint where I could point to and say, "Wow, Tibbs really coached he really put a great scheme out there." I just thought there were some really good individual performances. And to be honest, Mitchell was a little off, tonight. We've certainly seen him fill it up. And if he did, we could be talking about a different result. But you got to give the players credit. Grimes, IQ, Deuce, those three guys I thought did a really good job on him.
Yes, and real quick, everyone, if you want to call into the show, I know we put out a tweet there that said to call in with the phone numbers. We don't have the phones tonight, so please get on the Discord. So Discord calls tonight. Everyone that wants to, give their 2 cents on the game tonight and where the Knicks are at this point and where you think they're headed in the future, just call in on the Discord and we'll get you in. And following up with you, Jeff, after the first quarter, the Knicks were up 23-16, and the Cavs only shot 26%. The Knicks shot 41%. Cavs going 2 of 11 from three. The Knicks going 1 of 10 from three in the first quarter. So that first quarter was ugly defensively. And another surprise tonight for me is, give me your thoughts on these rotations tonight in terms of, RJ came out in the first quarter and then he came right back in. And I thought that was going to be Cam's spot there. Tom Thibodeau makes some rotation decisions tonight. Cam is the odd man out, it looks like. On the post game, he said that, it's just a rotation, a coach's decision. That's all he said. And I don't know what, this is my first time going on with you, Jeff. So I don't know what's your thoughts on Cam as a player overall. But what do you think about, Tibbs shortening the rotation tonight and Cam being the odd man out? We'll see if Rose is a permanent decision. I'm still skeptical. I did see a tweet from Fred Katz that said that Tibbs said that this is a one-game thing with it being a back-to-back. I mean, I'm sorry. He didn't specifically say it's a one-game thing. Fred said it seems like this is just a one-game thing. So the speculation is that Rose just got some rest. But it's specifically with Cam, Jeff, do you agree with this decision? And how do you think this could affect the team going forward in your opinion?
I'm really happy you brought up Cam. I have a lot of thoughts on this. So during the game, I was very interested. I think I saw a tweet, whether it was towards the end of the first or the second, and it said, it looks like Cam is out tonight. Maybe the Dallas game was a rough one for him, and Cats didn't make any assumptions or anything like, oh, he's out of the rotation, but it was a little curious to see that, oh, the explanation for Derrick Rose being out as well, second night of the back-to-back or first night or, whatever it is. And for Cam, it's coach's decision. So my thing on Cam is this. I like Cam, and Cam is a player that I have wanted to do well because of what I think his potential is, right? So I thought coming into this season that he had a lot to prove, but I wanted him to get a chance. And I thought he did get a chance. So, for the whole season, if we look at the entire season, he's the Knick with the fourth best plus minus on the team for players that have played at least 20 games. The last 10 games, though, has been a rough spot for him. For players that average at least 20 minutes per game, he's had the lowest, and he's actually tied with RJ Barrett. The only thing I want to say about the Tibbs decision, it worked for one game. I can't criticize it too much right now, but I would have hoped that Cam had kind of built enough money in the bank, so to speak, with Tibbs and the coaching staff for kind of how he played this year, and maybe give him the chance to fight through some of these struggles. I listen, and I know there's going to be fans out there that think this is crazy. And I'm not saying, I don't believe in Quentin Grimes, because I do believe in the long term, Grimes is the better fit in the starting lineup. But it was curious to me that once Grimes was healthy again, he just got the starting role immediately, and Cam was out of that. Because for me, it's kind of like you can't lose your starting spot through injury. You've got to give the player a chance to take it or not. So I thought that sent a rough message to Cam. And to see him out now, I hope it's not for the future. I think it could be. I think the way that the Knicks coaching staff has made decisions, they use certain intervals, whether it's 10 games, 15, 20 games. We saw before the 20-game mark, Evan was made situational. Then we started to see Obi and Randle start to get minutes together. Now, who knows? Maybe Cam is out. So it seems like these decisions are being made based on data, but I don't know. JD, I do know I've listened to you a little bit, so I know you're a Cam guy. Obviously, I want to hear what you think as well. But there's data to support this decision to say it's right. I don't feel good about it, though.
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked by the decision tonight. He only played 9 minutes yesterday. Now you could make the case that yesterday's 9 minutes or 7 minutes was his worst 7-minute spurt of the season. Because he came in, he had a bad call on him on a 3-point shot that was tipped by Dinwiddie. They called it out of bounds, but he had a turnover trying to create a shot. He stepped out of bounds by the corner 3-point line. I don't know how much you put that on him, on an NBA floor, but he did not look good. But I thought, as you mentioned, he won enough equity with the coach because I had tweeted out, the 5 games that he had prior to the last 2 games. He averaged 30.4 minutes per game. He was at 15.4 points per game, 2 steals a game. He was shooting 55% from the field, 35% from 3, 94% from the free throw line, and he was having solid defense. So it is curious that, once Grimes came back, he magically got hurt, and then he missed the game, and that allowed Grimes to get back in and get into a groove. And then from there, that's all she wrote. And I thought that Cam he was playing better as a starter than he was off the bench, because he's a rhythm player, kind of like with Obi. With these rhythm players, they're tough to figure out. So there's something going on. Jonathan Macri at the Knicks Film School had said yesterday on his post game that he had heard from a birdie that there's definitely something going on with the locker room in Tibbs. That he doesn't totally have the locker room. So is Cam one of those players that is at odds with Tibbs? We don't know, and we won't find out unless until a decision is made. So we'll see what happens here in the future. Do you see Cam being here after the trade deadline?
I hope so. I like, I just, the team has been in such a weird place for a long time because you go through the Donovan Mitchell saga. We don't end up with him. So we still have a good amount of young players and some vets, but we haven't really picked a direction. We're trying to mix them both. We're trying to compete. And Cam is a player that is seen by a lot of people to have a really good potential. So you hope that he gets a chance to flash that and given consistent minutes what he can do. So I hope he's here past the trade deadline because even if Quentin Grimes is the starter, there's still enough minutes for Cam to get 20 to 25 a night, and he can play multiple positions. And even, you talked about the defense. There have been some times where either lead guards are given Brunson or IQ some trouble, and then all of a sudden you see Cam get matched up on them, and you see him poke away his steal. You see him kind of anticipate where the ball handler wants to go with his handle. And you just want to see more of that. The only thing, like, and I'm sure you saw it too, I know that there was a couple of games ago where him and Julius were kind of on a fast break. He was ahead of Julius. Julius didn't pass it to him. He had a little bit of body language here and there, but I actually thought Julius should have made that pass.
Mhm.
And so I don't know what's going on. It's funny because we just saw this Shams article come out with there's some issues in Atlanta with Trae Young and Nate McMillan. So you wonder, like you referenced Macri's report, what's going on in the locker room? The team is clearly not performing. So are there some players who feel, well, listen, if I was getting more minutes, this team would be doing better? I don't think you can fault Cam for feeling that way. Any professional athlete who has confidence in himself should feel that way. It's more about, how do you communicate that or how do you convey that, to your teammates? And are you still, I looked at him on the bench. It didn't look like he was sulking. He wasn't in the corner. He seemed to be cheering on his teammates. So I'm sure we'll see. Who knows what will come out, but I really hope he's here when the trade deadline comes. What about you?
No, I do as well. I hope he's here. But I don't know, Jeff. It's not looking too good. I just think there's a lot of questions still that need to be answered with this team. Will the coach even be here? So we'll see where it goes with Cam. I hope he's here and I hope he gets a fair shot. But I think everything else, as with everywhere else on the roster and this bench and the young players, direction of the team. I think there's just a lot in the air that needs to be figured out here. So we'll see where they go. Let's talk about RJ Barrett here tonight. He had 31 minutes. He shot 5 of 13, 2 of 7 from 3, had 15 points. He was a +7, 8 rebounds. He has 6 turnovers. This is a polarizing player. He's becoming a polarizing player, it seems, here in the Knicks, within the Knicks community. He had a weird game because he had a slow start. In the first quarter, I had him here for I think it was like 3 turnovers. By the second quarter, he had 5. So 5 or 6 turnovers came in the first half. 3 of those were travels, which goes into the theme tonight with the refs with the traveling call. But then he had a very, very strong third quarter. He came in the third quarter strong, and then you go into these whole Tibbs thing where he doesn't come into like the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter. So I thought that was interesting. But what's your thoughts on the way that RJ Barrett played tonight?
Like you said, man, yeah, he's so polarizing. But I will say this. The one thing I respect about RJ is he does not stop. He does not give up. He may continue to do the things that piss you off as a fan, that really frustrate you and annoy you, but he doesn't stop. The first quarter was really ugly. And honestly, the travels pissed me off, but the play that upset me the most was he had like a 2-on-1 with Julius in transition, and he just pulled up for 3 out of nowhere. And that decision making sometimes when he drives into the lane and doesn't see, someone on the perimeter. There was another play actually between him and Obi where he drove down the lane and there was two guys on him and he kind of had like a push shot and then Obi cut in from the corner, was clearly ready for a lob. He misses him and then Obi goes over to him and he's like, "Yo, man, like you got to see me. I'm cutting there." And like that's happened a lot this year. So RJ Barrett can be really frustrating, but I got to keep it fair. He bounced back. He hit some big shots in the third and fourth quarter. He was dreadful from three, but in the third quarter, I think he hit his first three from the corner. So he kept going. He stayed with it, and he's always been kind of like that. I was okay with his game tonight, but I said on the last post game, and I'll continue to kind of stay with it for RJ. Like 20-point games don't impress me anymore from RJ. Like I'm not going to be, hey, RJ had a good game, he got 20. What I want to see is the defense that we saw from him 2 seasons ago. I want to see better decision making. I want to see him keeping his head up when he drives into the lane, find teammates if they're cutting, and make winning basketball plays. Because there was an RJ Barrett 2 seasons ago that I thought was making a lot of winning basketball plays. And to me, it didn't matter necessarily what his stat line looked like. Because I saw from the eye test, you're contributing to winning basketball. But there are a lot of games where I don't feel like that's necessarily the case. And sometimes I feel like it has to do with the contract. And now you're a paid man. You made your money. You feel like you're one of the 3, obviously, big faces of the franchise. And you have to do a certain amount. But if he lets the game comes to him, I think he's a much better player. So overall, I'm okay with his game tonight because he struggled mightily in the first half, but rebounded. And I do think he's a part of the reason we won. But just some of the things that continue to frustrate us are still there for him.
Yeah, and in the third quarter, which was his best stretch of the night, RJ goes 4 of 4 from the field, 2 of 2 from three. You mentioned hitting one of his first threes. He had a perfect third. 4 of 4 from the field, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 2 of 2 from three. He had 12 points, and was a +6 in that quarter. And you talk about the winning plays. And listen, we get, we're very critical of Julius Randle when it's warranted, but on the 9-minute and 14-second mark in the third quarter, RJ gets a clear breakaway lane, and he ends up getting fouled. He had Julius Randle right next to him, wide open throughout the whole time, trailing, and he looked at him, he saw him, and right after, I saw Randle just kind of like just flail his arms, and he just walked the other way. Like, in other words, he didn't even go to RJ to like give him a pound or help him up or good play. I think Randle was frustrated in that play because he probably felt like, I was wide open. We could have made this easier. Now you have to go to the free throw line and shoot 2 free throws. And I think that's one of the things that's surprised me about RJ this season is that there's a lot of opportunities when he's driving, and we push for him to be a playmaker, but he's had those playmaking opportunities. And I think it's a mental thing, in my opinion, because he wants to make the right play. But I think this season his mindset has shifted to when he's struggling, he's trying to score. And in his mind, that's the right play.
Right.
I want to score, and I want to keep being aggressive. And even when he's missing layups, even when he's missing shots at the rim, in his mind, the next play is to continue to attack the rim. And so I think that, and you talk about the contract is not even here yet, but yet, it seems like he's already feeling some of that pressure. And then the other thing to it is, you hope that this is not it. Like, this is not the best that we see from him as a player. You mentioned that, 20 points, that's not enough anymore. And it's not that it's enough. I don't know that, you want him to score 30 or 25, but you want him to be more of a complete player. And I think his defense has taken a step back this season. He was solid tonight.
Yeah.
But what I'm looking from RJ moving forward is better defense and just a slightly better shot from the 3-point line. Because if he doesn't, Jeff, you talk about, and it could lead into the next question I have for you is, tonight the Knicks held the Cleveland Cavaliers to 34.9%, which is the worst a Knicks opponent has scored all year. And they shot 40%, and they shot 17% from three, 5 of 29 from three. So I asked people in the chat, I asked you, is tonight's game, is this sustainable? Can the Knicks, using this rotation, bringing now McBride in with quickly, that's more defense. You talk about Reggie Bullock and kind of giving you this feel of that tough and gritty team. I kind of got a little bit of that tonight. But do you think, we're playing the Hawks on they have a few days off, so I believe it's either Tuesday or Wednesday. Is this style, the way they play tonight, do you think this is sustainable, Jeff?
I don't think it's super sustainable. I think, we've got to figure out how to improve the weaknesses from our team, the patterns that have been there all season. So like you said, we didn't shoot well from three tonight, but we beat a team who is better than us, 1 through 15. And they happen to have a horrible shooting percentage game. But, I'm not going to say that's the reason that we won. I do think for spurts, and I do think during key individual moments, we showed up and we played good defense. But now if you asked me if we were going to play a series against this team, what chance would I give us? I wouldn't say a great chance at all. I think the two players defensively who I think you can expect effort and results, which is the key important part like this, were Mitch and IQ. I thought both Mitch and IQ tonight were great. Mitch's stat line is not going to be crazy. I think he had 5 and 13. But man, his hustle, there were some plays in the fourth that were really big. The offensive rebounds, keeping possessions alive. IQ and Grimes, I think you can expect that. But really, I think the two people that we need more from, and it's not about statistical production, is Julius Randle and RJ Barrett. We need them to be locked in from an awareness standpoint, knowing where your assignment is on the court. You can't get beat backdoor. You can't lose position and box out. You can't not box out. Those are the two guys. And then from an offensive standpoint, we just spent a lot of time talking about RJ Barrett. You can't have blinders when you drive into the lane. You can't miss reads when you have teammates open for three. Julius, you can't just dribble into the paint and have two people crowd you and then just lose the ball. Those are the things that, honestly, if we shored that up, I don't think this is a top 5 team in the East, but we would not be complaining as a fan base like we are on a nightly basis, because we're seeing things that are not like schematically based. They're not talent based. They're kind of effort and awareness things that I think, individually, these players who are really, really talented and really smart should be able to figure out. So short answer, I'm going to say no. I don't think it's sustainable. But I saw some things where I'm at least encouraged that we can start to make a turn.
I wish I could tell you that if you're going to tell me that Deuce is definitely going to get Derrick Rose's minutes, if you're going to tell me that, Grimes is going to continue to play defense like this, which there's no reason to doubt he wouldn't. He had 40 minutes tonight and he played, most of his minutes on Donovan Mitchell. if this is the way that Tibbs is going to go with the rotation, maybe put Cam in there, there's a chance that they become everything starts to go lower in terms of scoring. And there's a chance that they could go on a little bit of a defensive run. But you mentioned the key here is when you start to compare what they did tonight to 2 years ago when they had that run, is RJ and Randall were playing defense that year.
Right.
Right? Like the effort was better. And, you could talk about Deuce's 12 or 16 minutes, and you could talk about these role players. If Cam is even in the rotation, I don't expect him to have 30 minutes. That's not going to be compared to Randall's 35 minutes tonight and RJ's 30 plus minutes. In other words, though your two main players are going to share the floor for the majority of the game, if they're not playing defense like they were 2 years ago, then you could have all the role players you want playing great defense. It's just going to make it more difficult to sustain, that effort. Now, but tonight, they definitely played well defensively. At least that's what the numbers say. I know a lot of people would say that the Cavs missed a lot of open shots, and listen, that's Tibbs' defense. The head coach of the Cavs said before the game that, hey, we're going to get the 3-point shots he literally said that. He said, if this team likes to pack the paint, we're going to get the 3-point shots that we want. And I think that's been the issue with Tibbs' scheme this season, is that the shots that people were missing 2 years ago, they're not missing anymore. This is not, you got the fans back. The shooting in this league is getting better and better. And so now his scheme is getting, into question a lot. And we're going to talk about Tibbs here in a moment. Let me get to a few super chats here. Guys, if you could take a moment, hit that thumbs up button for your boys, hit the like button. All it takes is a few seconds. We're here, covering this post game. The Knicks win 92-81. They're 11-13 now on the season. They're 5-7 at home. They snap a 5-game home losing streak. They're playing the Atlanta Hawks on Wednesday on ESPN. It is their last home game before they go on the road. And I'm going to get to the super chat here by S.Pole25, $5 super chat. He says, is Grimes the spider stopper? I don't think he made a field goal over Grimes all game. And Jeff, let's talk about Grimes a little bit here. He had 40 minutes, 2 of 8 from the field. Now listen, all 4 from 3, 6 rebounds, 1 assist, 2 steals, 4 turnovers. He was a +2, 4 points, +2. Outstanding defense, right? Like the defense is outstanding. Do you give him a pass tonight in terms of the shooting because of the effort and how much, the assignment that he had tonight on Donovan Mitchell? What's your thoughts on Grimes' game tonight, and what's your thoughts on him moving forward? He hasn't shot the ball well yet. I mean, I know he had a good game. I believe it was last game or 2 games ago. He got his shooting a little bit back, but his 3-point shot has not been there yet this season. What's your thoughts on Grimes as a player, and what's your thoughts on his game tonight?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, I'm gonna give him a little bit of a pass because I wouldn't listen. I'm not gonna call Grimes a spider stopper. I think if you have an average game from Donovan Mitchell tonight, Donovan Mitchell can score on anyone. I do think Grimes, when he was matched up on Mitchell, did a good job. But though actually the part that I was most impressed with on Grimes's defense was he's the type of player, like there are players on the Knicks. I've seen this happen with Brunson and Randle. Sometimes Brunson and Randle will try to execute a double team, but the other player doesn't know what they're doing, and then someone ends up being free, and it's like, wait, what happened? And they get an open shot. Grimes is really smart when he executes his double because he'll do it sometimes when the opposing player has their back turned. Maybe it's going to be a really difficult angle for them to pass out of the double team. And I saw Grimes, when he gambles when he feels like he has a really high opportunity to get a steal. And I saw him do that a couple times tonight. So when I look at his stat line and I see 4 points, I'm not worried about the shooting because I do believe it's going to come around. You have to be honest with yourself and say it hasn't come around for a while now. And Grimes has had, I mean, JD, he had at least 3 or 4 wide open threes that he just bricked. The form looked good. I don't think he was rushing them. I didn't see anything wrong there. So I have to believe as a player that has a reputation as a hard worker, he's always in the gym. I have to believe they're going to fall. Like we've seen these shooting slumps with IQ and he's come out of them, but it's certainly worrisome. I mean, I can't sit here and tell you, yeah, it's no biggie. I mean, I think there is actually a couple of victories in the past 5 games or so. I'm sorry, a couple of losses that if you just look at some of the Grimes shots that were open, if we hit some of those, we could be looking at a different result in some of those situations. So ultimately, I am going to give him a pass for tonight. He did have a really tough assignment. I thought he did a good job. I do think he's going to come around, but you want this kid who, again, supposedly was, a sticking point, untouchable in the Mitchell talks, right? Quentin Grimes, you want this kid to really show you, and he is good. He is good, but we definitely want to see a little bit more going forward.
Yeah, in 9 games this season as a starter, Quentin Grimes is shooting 24% from 3. He has shot 33 attempts as a starter from the 3-point line. He's made 8. He's shooting 44% from the field, though, so far as a starter. So, you look at the 44%, and that's a lot of, the good drives and the layups that he's been able to make. You've seen some playmaking there. He is a solid rebounder. I think, and I don't know if you believe all that stuff about him being untouchable. I know that's been a lot of the talk, but I definitely want to see more, because in the end, when I heard all the reports that he was a player, they tried their best not to put in a deal. All these combinations with Obi, maybe RJ, picks, this and that in the fourth. If you're going to be reluctant to trade him for Donovan Mitchell, you're probably going to be reluctant to trade him for anybody else, because when you look at the market now, who is really going to be available that's better than Donovan Mitchell? Right. And I know things could change now because you see them play and your opinions change of a player. But at the end of the day, listen, I love the young kids, and this goes for Cam and everybody else. I think, Jeff, the one thing with our young core is, and let's give Grimes some more games, get his feet wet and get his conditioning better. I always want to be patient, but at some point we need to get some consistency from these guys. And you talk about IQ, you talk about Grimes, you talk about a lot of these guys that are advertised as shooters, as snipers, and yet we're one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league. And even when Fournier was playing, right? So Grimes is going to be an integral part, at least of this season, until I guess they make the next big trade. I need to get more from him. Tonight with 4 points, like you mentioned, you get an assignment like Donovan Mitchell, who also played 40 minutes, right? A night like tonight, I understand it's tough. So I'm not going to get on him a lot, because you can make the case his defense tonight is what won us the game, because Donovan Mitchell goes, even decent. He goes 48%, 45%. We could lose the game.
Right.
But as you said, when you get these wide open threes, we have to knock them down, because with the starting 5, he's there for that reason. He's there to knock down shots. And to me, let me ask you this. Do you think, when we look at Quentin Grimes and I tell you Danny Green, do you think that's would it be a disappointment if Grimes is not better than Danny Green to you?
I think it would. I'm gonna say this because I've seen enough of Grimes. I've seen enough of Grimes' ability to drive the ball. It's not frequent, so I can't say that he's really efficient at driving the ball, and it happens a lot. But I've seen enough to believe that I think from a playmaking standpoint and from a driving the ball standpoint that he maybe has a little bit more versatility in his offensive game than Danny Green. So I probably would be disappointed if he didn't end up being better than him. But that also depends on what type of team we have and like the composition of the roster. Because if we get a star on this team via trade, now everybody's role looks different to me. And now maybe I'm not so disappointed if Grimes, if he's still here, right? And maybe if he's not included in the trade, maybe I'm not so disappointed because now we really don't need him to do some of the other things that maybe he's capable of because we have another player who does that at a really high level, really efficiently on a night in and night out basis. But yeah, I think, I mean, I'm interested to hear what you think as well, but I would probably be disappointed. Now, his draft, he wasn't drafted very high, right? But, you know, what he's been built up to be, I think, once he finally started to get minutes in Tibbs' rotation last year, we saw a lot of promise from him. And I think, of course, the Mitchell trade saga is going to be, something that Knicks fans hold on to in terms of like what he could be or could not be. So, yeah, I think ultimately I would be disappointed if he's not better than Danny Green.
I would be too, only because of the fact that there was also a report out there that said Jerry West said that Grimes was better than RJ in his opinion, and Jerry West is a very well respected,
Right.
player evaluator. And if Leon Rose did listen to that advice, um, and Grimes was really going to be, he was a sticking point in that deal. Listen, when I look at Danny Green, he was a career 8 points per game player, 39% from three. Now Danny Green was an outstanding role player, won a championship, but Grimes has a more all around skill set in terms of Danny Green was not a ball handler. Grimes can get better at that, but he is a better ball handler than Danny Green. So the tools to me are more versatile with a Grimes to be able to reach a better floor than Danny Green. So I would be disappointed if Grimes turns out to be a career just 3-point shooter with good defense. I would want to see more from that.
Right.
It's funny. Last year when he shot 40% from three, going into this year, I was actually thinking, can we get Desmond Bane out of him? When you look at them together, there's a lot of similarities there. Now, Desmond Bane has made a crazy leap this season. He's hurt now, but he's made a real tough, big leap as a player. But when you look at last season, the way those two players, to me, I'm looking at Desmond Bane as a floor, for Quentin Grimes. Can he reach that? And Desmond Bane is not even nowhere near the middle of his career yet. I think he's only 3 years now in the NBA. So to me, Jeff, I want to get Desmond Bane out of Quentin Grimes. And I think when this organization made the decision to keep him, then to me, it's like, okay, you're not keeping him to be Danny Green. You're keeping him to be Desmond Bane.
Right.
And so, we'll see where the Knicks go with him. 40 minutes tonight. Again, the 3-point shot has to improve. Jeff, let's talk about Julius Randle tonight. 18 points, 1 turnover, 4 assists, 9 rebounds, 1 of 7 from three. He was 7 of 19 from the field overall, 35 minutes. To me, just standard night. The 3-point shot, it's really up and down with him. And I know he has these hot shooting 3-point games, but I don't think that's his shot right now. I know he had that big shooting year a couple years ago. He was 40%. But I thought it was, I thought it was a solid game. I thought he had some big shots in key moments. Yeah, not much for me for Julius Randle. What did you think about his game?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I was really happy about, again, with Jared Allen out, I thought Julius did a good job of driving the ball. He, has this rough habit of really over complaining sometimes to the refs, but I actually thought he had a bit of an argument for a couple of calls here and there that maybe he should have got. But the thing that frustrates me with Julius, and it's not just Julius, it's this team, they say that good shooting is contagious. I think bad shooting is contagious as well. Between Julius and RJ, I feel like sometimes when one of them starts to take ill-advised shots, the other almost seems to want to match them. If not intentionally, then it's like, I gotta take mine now because
Yeah.
Julius, and it was the threes tonight. There was a couple of threes where I'm just sitting there and I'm watching, and it's like he just took one before. Literally the possession before, he takes one, he misses it. And then down the end again, there's minimal passing going on between the starting five or whoever is in. And then he takes another one. And it's tough because he's rewarded in a game like Milwaukee or one of the others where he had hot shooting, and there's a first quarter where he takes 7 or 8 and he hits 4 or 5, so he believes he can do it. But like I was saying before, these numbers are good numbers. I can't slight them. 18, 9, and 4 for a power forward in today's game, but it's the decision making. There's still moments of Randle where his lack of awareness just has his back to all of the other players on his team, is dribbling, a double comes, either he doesn't know it's coming or one of his teammates is not shouting it out. He gets pickpocketed. It leads to an open 3 down the other end, and these are just swings that can completely change the game. They didn't tonight. And to Julius's credit, I thought he had a big part to play in some of the moments where the momentum was shifting, and then either he made a nice cut or had a decent shot making effort to kind of stop the momentum. But with Julius, you're trying to see if he can fix some of the things that have plagued him throughout most of his time in New York. And there are games when he does it well. Like what was it the other night? I thought it was really interesting when they interviewed Johnny Bryant at halftime, and he said Julius is making quick decisions. Like that speaks volumes to me that a coach on the team is saying we know when he's playing really well, and
Maybe
we
the
know
future head coach is saying
it very well could be. It very well could be. But that speaks volumes to me when a coach on the staff comes out and says something like that, because they're clearly watching the tape and they're clearly seeing him dribble into 3 people, lose the ball, get frustrated, put his hands up in the air, not run back, and it's a snowball effect. You didn't see that a lot tonight, so you got to give him credit. But we just want to see more of good play from him. He's capable of it. He's a really good player. He's smart, but I do think more than maybe a lot of other players that I've seen on the Knicks, he gets in his head so easily. And then when it happens, it's like there's no way back. And that's the really hard part about having Julius Randle on the Knicks.
Yeah, he had mentioned a post game a while ago that, the only guy that he was talking about how he felt a relief that Jalen Brunson's on this team, because he said that Jalen Brunson helps to calm him. And he had an interesting quote where he said that's a task in it itself, which goes to your point of, Jalen Brunson's a guy. He basically is telling Jalen Brunson's the only guy I respect on this team. And in terms of, to that level, to where he has the ability to calm me down, these high leverage moments. And I don't know that Jalen Brunson wants to have that role full time. Some of these things wane as losing starts to pile on throughout an 82 game season. And I think that's it. if he can give me, that ratio he had tonight of 4 assists and 1 turnover on 35 minutes, I'll sign up for that.
Right.
I'll tell you that. I'll sign up for those things because, that tells me that the decisions are better. I thought in the fourth quarter, when Tibbs called a tech, it was 84-78. And then Kevin Love, there was a blocking foul on Randle with 2:26 to go. I thought that was a big, big moment for Randle there because that could have been called either way. On the replay, I thought Kevin Love was moving a little bit, and it was called the blocking foul. And Randle made 2 key free throws that made the game 86-79. That was a very important moment there. So give him credit for that moment there. But let's see how, he plays Wednesday against one of his nemesis, the Atlanta Hawks. John Collins and Nate McMillan. They definitely know how to defend him when, they play that quasi zone on him and they forced him. That's a team that understands how to play him. And you talk about it, a lot of these teams, they want to force him to make decisions. And I think some of it, when he gets double teamed, a lot of people say, well, it's because he's respected and they're afraid of him. I think it's a combination of both. I think when he is playing well, there is concern for other teams for him to get going. But I also think it's also premeditated to make him make decisions, to force him to find the open hand, force him to find the open lane. And that's where Jalen Brunson's acquisition has been, key in helping to decrease some of that responsibility for him. And Jalen Brunson tonight goes 7 of 16, 2 of 4 from 3, 7 of 8 from the free throw line. He had 23 points, 3 turnovers. Jeff, let me know if I'm wrong in this. He's 7 of 16, 23 points. Is it me, or does he look just a slight step slow since he's been hurt? Or am I looking at it? He just seems like on some of these drives before the quad thing, he had a little bit more pop to him. And I just think he's battling through the injury. I don't necessarily, feel that he's 100%, but it's funny to you. It's funny that, he goes 7 of 16. He still gives you 23 points. And I still don't feel he played necessarily a great game tonight.
Yeah, I'll say where I think I see what you're talking about is when Jalen goes to make his move, he has a couple of hesitation dribbles before he picks what side he's going to drive to. I feel like before the quad injury, those were really quick and crisp. And now I feel like I see him laboring through some of that a little bit, and almost whereas before he trusted his decision making and speed to get to the rim and maybe be able to kind of hit that layup over the defense. Now I almost feel like he's looking for contact a little bit more because maybe he feels that he is that step a little slower. It's funny because it's not super noticeable. And like you said, he still has a really good game. What I'm pumped about is we're looking at this game from Jalen Brunson, 23, 4, and 2. And I think you and me are on the same page. Like, I don't think he didn't have like a major imprint on this game, but this is our starting point guard, and this is what we can expect from him, which is great. And it's great that he doesn't have to have an all-star type game for us to win against a really good team, which is also a good sign. Now, again, we were talking about earlier, is this sustainable? Probably not. But Jalen had a really good game. I thought he was one of the 2 or 3 guys on the team that were really good at stopping the momentum from shifting. When the Cavs hit a big shot, when they had a dunk or a 3, I thought Jalen either maybe the defense wasn't set for the Cavs and he had a really quick drive to try and get to the cup. Those are moments where you see his basketball IQ at play, where he feels like he's talked a lot about in post games. We're right there with these teams. We're a couple of plays away. We have to execute. And I think he saw in some moments, at the end of the first half, specifically in the third and the fourth, I saw some moments where he's like, wait a minute, this is a moment where we could lose it. Things could snowball here. I got to step up. And he did. But yeah, overall, I do agree. I see a little bit of hesitance in him, a little bit, but hopefully, it's not something that's going to be long term.
Right, and give credit to him because this is why a player like him, this is why the Knicks felt comfortable in bringing him along because, you know, RJ gets sick. Somebody gets a flu, and it's like the biggest thing to their performance. And I don't think people understand unless you played, maybe football or basketball, a quad, like anything, a bruise, that
Cushion.
really, it really like when you're trying to pivot and you're trying to, explode off a move, it really affects you. It affects your lift. And for him to even, I don't care if he's, it seems like some of our other players, they're 85% and that destroys their game. And yet Jalen Brunson is probably 85% out there, 80%. And yet he still can give you almost 50% shooting, 2 or 4 from three. And it's what you say is he still is able to get to his spot,
Right.
albeit maybe a slight step slower in his motions, with his juke moves to get by and create some separation. But as and he's considered a veteran, but still a young veteran, he just knows how to play basketball, and that is where the IQ comes in. That is where, film and him knowing I'm only a 6'1", 6'2" guy. I have to figure out a way to be successful in this league. And that's why I think he's so valuable, at least to this current roster right now, because he just knows how to get through adversity. And his message as a leader on this team through adversity has been positive. Now it hasn't turned into wins because they've gone through this terrible stretch, but you just know that he's going to be a very positive influence in this locker room. Now when we go to, I want to talk about Mitchell Robinson next, because Mitchell Robinson tonight had 5 points, 13 rebounds, 3 steals. Now, Jarrett Allen, who's averaging 13 and 10, was not there tonight. Give me your thoughts on Mitch, because, Mitch is an interesting player because there's a lot of thoughts on him. Can we get consistency out of him? Should he be giving us more? You saw the last game. It wasn't very good after he just had a monster game. Do you think Mitch should be a double-double guy? Should he be that? What's your thoughts on Mitch? And do you think we can get consistency from him, going forward this season?
I think it's getting there. I'm a big Mitch fan, and I used to be a fan that was very on the fence about Mitch. I was kind of the mindset that, listen, he does 2 or 3 things well. He dives to the rim off a pick and roll. He creates gravity. He gets lobs. He alters the offense. He gets blocks. And maybe a couple of seasons ago, or as recent even as last season, I was frustrated that, at this point in his career, he's been with us since he was drafted, that he hasn't developed more. But the more and more that I watch Mitch impact this team, I feel like I'm less concerned with him about being a double-double guy, and the only area that I'm truly concerned with is free throw shooting. If Mitchell Robinson somehow becomes a 70% free throw shooter, 65 even, whatever it is, I think he's already a really impactful player. I think he can be even more so. Um, I I think Mitch has been one of the better players that we've had this season. He was out for a little bit, and I thought, defensively, we really struggled without him. We're lucky that we have some good depth with Sims, and I know Hartenstein has had some rough games here and there, but tonight I thought he played well. But I think overall, we have to kind of see what Mitch is. He's never going to be a guy that's going to develop a post move. He's not going to be a guy that's going to develop a face-up game. but he can still be really, really good. And I'm going to take it back a little bit. Besides free throw shooting, the one other area that I want him to be is I want him to be a quarterback of the defense like Tyson Chandler was in terms of communication. That's what I want from him. I want him to be, and you know what? Maybe he is. I'm not always. He's not mic'd up, and I don't always hear, but I don't see with whether it's hand gestures or anything like that. I don't see a lot of communication from him. I want that from him. I want him to call out sets from the other team. I want him to be calling out more switches, things like that. If he makes that jump and the free throw shooting, I think he can really etch himself into a top 10 center, but he still has a ways to go, but he's still a really good player for us.
Yeah, and Tyson Chandler, is a good comparison because, Tyson Chandler as a Knick only had, he had one season where he was double digit in rebounds. The other season he was at 9 rebounds. And I think in his career he's only had like four or five seasons. And Tyson Chandler played a lot of years where he's at double digits in terms of rebounding. And I think that's where I would want him to be double digits is in rebounding, at least 10 a game, especially in this era where there's a lot of shooting going on. So it's more opportunity to get rebounds. But you mentioned that quarterbacking, when you looked at Joakim Noah in Tibbs' system, you looked at Tyson Chandler, right? As a Knick and in Dallas when they won the championship, is Mitch being able, and who knows if it's going to be for Tibbs in the foreseeable future, for whoever the next head coach could be for this franchise, is Mitch establishing more of that defensive leadership where he's telling players where they should be going and installing some of that confidence, in the other guys, because he has good potential with some of the perimeter guys that are already here with Deuce and Grimes. So he has some type of guys in front of him that can help him out. But yeah, it's interesting because you see Robert Williams in Boston. You see a lot of players that are similar. I just think that, when a player comes in, Jeff, we always want to create the player like it's 2K. So it's like next year he should develop the 3-point shot. The year after that, he should develop the mid-range shot. And I just think with Mitch, he's not going to be any of that. I know he does these tweets where he wants to shoot threes, and he wants to do this. You see some of the offseason videos of him doing so. But we see that with players all the time where in the offseason they're playing with the fans where they'll post a video of them doing something that they don't do in the game. But I think with Mitch, if he can just focus on just continue to be consistent as a defensive presence, he's valuable to this team. I mean, the job he did against Giannis, the job he did against the Cavs tonight, he can be a very important piece to this team, and they've invested in him, so he better be,
Right.
unless they include him into one of these, big time trades in the future. So let's see. The Knicks win tonight, 92-81, and our poll right now has 639 votes, and the fans are voting that is tonight's play sustainable going forward. Can the Knicks continue to play this type of defense? Can they hold the Hawks to under 100 points? The Knicks tonight, with the Cavs only scoring 81 points, it's the lowest of the season. It's the first time this season that they've held the team under 100 points. The other two lowest after tonight was 102 points they gave up to the Magic and 103 to the Nuggets. So this is the first time, which is surprising, that a Tom Thibodeau team has given up under 100 points. And right now the fan base says 68% say no. They do not think that this play tonight is sustainable. So, let's see. They have a good, tough matchup tonight. I see some super chats. I'll get to that in a moment. Now, Jeff, I want to talk about, the situation that could have happened going into tonight. with Tom Thibodeau. CP's hitting me up like, hey, let me know if something happens tonight, because we don't know, we thought this game was going to go one way. I mean, we can be honest here and think and say that, I thought the way everything was leading up to tonight, I'm thinking, yep, 50, 45 points from Donovan Mitchell. Listen, I don't know about you, Jeff, but that third quarter of doom, you saw it, after I think we had like 18-point lead. And then once they cut it down to 3, right? You going into the half, I believe it was 46-43. And I'm like, oh, yep, here it goes. The third quarter of doom. And I was just waiting for it. I was, and I had texted a few of my friends and I said, look, they're gassing us up. The Knicks are gassing us up. They're having this lead early so we can get hyped up and watch what's gonna happen. And I said this is lining up to an epic post game show. But they held on, and somehow, some way, they held on to the lead. Do you think if the Knicks would have lost tonight, that Tom Thibodeau would have seen that Hawks game as a head coach of this team? And do you think with the win tonight, did he just buy himself another 10 games, Jeff?
I think we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but I'm not gonna lie, similar to you, I thought this had the chance to be, a huge game in terms of the direction of the franchise. I'll say this. If the Knicks lost tonight, and lost bad, I thought he was out. If we laid an egg, if we lost by 20, we ended up winning the third quarter 25-20. But if it ended up being similar to the Mavs, where I think they dropped 41 on us in that quarter, I think that would have been it. Dolan was in. I peeped Dolan in his usual seats tonight. So if that would have happened again and you would have heard the crowd booing like they did during the Mavericks loss, I think that would have been it. But it's funny, man. I don't know how much time Tibbs has bought himself. The one thing that's interesting to me is this. We talk a lot about his seat being hot. And I know we referenced a little bit the Macri article and the discussion about some players and him not necessarily being on the same page. I do think that a win like this does kind of symbolize to me on some level that at least a portion of the team, I'm not saying they're specifically fighting for him, but let's be real, they do hear the noise from outside. Brunson talked about it in his post game and saying that Tibbs is going to get a lot of the blame, but he puts us in good positions. Now, I think most fans that know Brunson and know how connected he's been to Tibbs since he was a child, and knows what the franchise did to bring him in, knows that Jalen Brunson is he's probably never going to say anything bad about any coach, but probably specifically Tibbs based on his familial relationships. But I do think the way that the Knicks played tonight from an effort standpoint, I think shows that they are still playing for him. They're still working for him. I just think from a rotation standpoint, there's still some things that really need to be ironed out before this team can be the best version of themselves. So how many more games did he buy? I'd say at least 5. 10 might be a stretch, but he is hanging on, by the skin of his teeth right now.
So what if we get blown out by the Hawks on national television? Do you think?
I would be shocked. I'm not going to say I would be shocked. I think if we get blown out by the Hawks, I don't think he gets fired. I think there's maybe another 2 or 3 after that. I forget how many games we have left on this homestand, because I know we had like
that's it.
That's it. So then then you're going on the road next. I'd be interested to see how we perform there for sure. But I don't think the next game is particularly important to like be all end all for his job security. It's definitely a part of it, But I think he bought himself some time with this win tonight against a really good team, and with a generational talent in Donovan Mitchell.
And it's interesting. It's funny you say that because I was actually trying to break it down into scenarios, right? Like, what is the realistic scenario? What is the scenario that maybe the front office would like to create, and what would be best? So, so when you look at the schedule, they play the Hawks and they have Monday and Tuesday as a day off. So had they lost tonight, it would have been interesting if they would have made a move, because when you look at the schedule after the Hawks, you're at Charlotte, you know that they should win that game. You're home against the Kings. Now the Kings are having an impressive season, but you have to, I would think, I mean, if you're the Knicks and you want to get to a playoff, you know, playoff position, you have to win that game.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
And then that's at home. And then you're at Chicago, which is strange. They're in Chicago twice. I can't believe I'm looking at that. Usually it's home and home, but they're actually at Chicago, back to back, and at Indiana. So they go on a 3-game road trip. And you can make the case these are all winnable games. Charlotte, Sacramento, Bulls twice, and the Pacers. So that's a nice 5-game stretch for Johnny Bryant. Right? So I'm thinking, okay, they probably can him after Cleveland, give him 2 days, let him get some practice time, implement whatever different, few plays. I don't know that you have the chance to really go in on a playbook here. And then you give him a home game against the Hawks. But then I'm thinking maybe they just want to give him that Charlotte game, ease him in. You're on the roll. You're expected to win that game. But as you mentioned, now it could actually turn into Tibbs' favor, this scenario, because you're going into that Hawks game. The Knicks play well against the Hawks, in terms of the season, at least. And then Tibbs is going to get the Charlotte game, and he's going to get the Sacramento game. And he's going to get, so unless something happens here within the next few games, this could be another one of those moments like the OKC moment where we get a false alarm, where, you get a game like that, and every time the Knicks have their backs against the wall, they get that win for Tibbs, and it extends his opportunity. So I just think, Jeff, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I those scenarios. I think if the Knicks come out well against the Hawks, then you're looking at Tibbs getting a nice soft schedule here, to because I don't know that they were going to treat him like Steve Nash, where Steve Nash Nets beat the Pacers. He still got canned. And I don't think this franchise would ever do that, especially with Leon Rose and the relationship that he has with Tibbs. So it's tough to say, because if we get smoked by the Hawks, then I don't know, man. I don't know, Jeff.
It could. Listen, I mean, of course it's possible when you have James Dolan at the helm. Anything is possible, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at some of the things that have happened with Tibbs recently. He gets a lot of criticism, and rightfully so, for being not flexible with certain rotations. But if I look at everything from the beginning of the season, I think making Evan Fournier situational to the fan seems like an easy call, right? Ev doesn't give you a lot besides shooting. He's probably a net negative, even with some of his really good shooting. So to the fan, that looks like an easy call, but I'm not so sure that's an easy call, for him and even the organization, based on them signing him to a 4-year deal, thinking that he's going to be a really big part of the offense. But, I think eye test and data tells you that there are other players on the roster that can give you shooting and also play defense and maybe drive or play make as well. So that happens, right? Then, fans have been clamoring for, at least since Obi Toppin and Julius Randle have been on the team together, hey, let's give them some minutes together. Let's see what that's like. Since the Philadelphia game, I think Tibbs has played them together at least for some combination of minutes every game. And it's been decent. I don't think it's been like a lineup that I'm like, oh my God, we have to have 30 minutes of this game, but it's been good. So he's been, I think he's been adjusting. I don't know that it's to the level that some fans want. I know a lot of fans want Obi to play more. I know fans want IQ to play more. I think over the years that they've been on this team, they've improved in some areas, and their minutes in general have gone up, just maybe not to the level that fans want. But then you had, Cam starting to start the season. That was another thing, another adjustment. Now Grimes is back and getting more minutes. So I've seen things here and there that give me reason to believe that he wants to adjust and not just do things his way. There's still a lot of things that I don't like. But I think the only thing, to your point, let's say they get blown out by the Hawks. And let's say that what we were talking about earlier with the locker room is true. That Tibbs, really guys are not feeling him anymore. Maybe specifically the young guys, and, maybe people feel like the direction of the team is really in question, and, he gets on the young guys all the time but doesn't hold Julius accountable. Like, those are things that I think could legitimately divide a locker room when you start getting on Cam Reddish and Quentin and RJ for certain things, but you're not doing it for Julius or Derrick Rose and stuff like that. So if that stuff is true and the locker room is divided and you get blown out by 20 on national TV to the Hawks, and you got Trae Young doing the shiver, in the garden and all this, now I can see a scenario, okay, that could be a little bit of doomsday. But ultimately, I got to believe with this win tonight, I'm sure there's some issues in the locker room, but I can't feel like they're to the level, where the sky is falling. So I got to believe that Tibbs has got at least a few more games left in the tank before, we start seeing reports surface from Ian Begley about, dissatisfaction from the top down.
Right. And, you made a good point there. Next game, I think if, even if Deuce doesn't come off the bench with IQ, and then you see Derrick Rose comes back, right? So he goes back to the veteran. You just saw Deuce, even in an offer offensively, you saw the energy and the defense he gave you, and you're facing a DeJounte Murray and Trae Young backcourt. This is another good matchup where you can use McBride with IQ off the bench and play that switching game and still be able to have a perimeter defender on, because sometimes when you have a good defender on a top player, they always use these picks to get you off. And then it always ends up being someone else guards, defends that guy. That's one of the things that is frustrating sometimes, when you have, you'll see Cam playing defense and then he'll get set on a pick and then someone else. You see Grimes playing defense, they'll put him on a pick and then it ends up being someone else. So you don't really, a defender starts the possession on the top player, but they don't end the possession on the top player because of, the switching and the picks that's going on. But when you have multiple guys, you have those combinations, you still award yourself the opportunity to, in the end of the possession, have still a good defender on the other team's top opposing player. And so if, let's say, he goes back to Rose and we get smoked, and this is how the energy with the fan base just turns negative, because you just won a game. Let's continue that. But I can see Tibbs against the Hawks. Rose comes back, and that I think is the disconnect. There's just inconsistencies with his style, I call it a lot template coaching from game to game. I'll give him credit that he's tried a lot of things this season. It's just there hasn't been much consistency. And going, with that, there's a $5 super chat from First Lady of Sports on the Tibbs topic. She says, let me see here. People, do you really think Leon Rose would fire Tibbs mid-season? It's not happening. The relationship is too strong. He could be fired at the end. I guess, Jeff, if you could look at it that way, I can see this organization. I think Leon would I don't know, because Leon once you make the move, you're on the clock. And I think that's one of the reasons he's kind of been hesitant to make that move early, because then where do you go? You have to go to your associate head coach, I would believe,
Yeah.
in Johnny Bryant, and then you're on the clock from there. And I think this organization also realizes that there's a bigger issue here than just Tom Thibodeau. There's a roster issue here that needs to be adjusted. So if you were to ask me, I think Leon wants to get this thing as closer to the trade deadline as possible, because people say make a trade, right? The problem is teams, you don't think the Lakers want to make a trade? You see the pressure the Lakers are facing day to day to make the trade, but the problem is not everybody else in the league is aligning with you. You're struggling, but some teams are just not ready to make deals yet, unless you're going to blow a team off the water with a deal, with an offer, right? So I think that's the issue with when you struggle this bad so early, you really put the organization in a tough situation because we're still not in trade season yet. And so I think Leon Rose wants to be able, and I'm not saying it's the correct thing. I just think, and I'm guessing, obviously, he would rather try to make a move, because you saw Ian Begley said this team is not looking to tank. Like, Leon is not looking to tank. So I'm already past that mentally, in terms of rebuilding the right way, peeling it all the way back, as CP says. This team's not looking to tank. So Leon probably wants to make some type of move. He's feeling pressure to do it. And then he wants to award that opportunity with Tibbs. If you were the GM, you probably would do it that way too. Like, you're going to fire the guy that you have a close relationship with. You're going to fire him. Like, that's a big deal. And so I think before you do that, and guess what? Tibbs has wanted a star here from day one. When they used to ask him about Bradley Beal and they asked him about Russell Westbrook, he always favored going and getting that star. So you don't think he's saying now, hey, Leon, you see the heat I'm facing? I'm about to get fired. Can you go get me somebody before you fire me? Let me see how I coach with a star before you make this move. So I think Leon would rather see if he can make a move. But if, like you said, if things continue to struggle, Leon's he's going to face a tough decision on, do you do it midseason or do you wait to the end of the year?
I think you're exactly right. And the one thing I would say to kind of piggyback on your point regarding Johnny Bryant, the roster is still a big issue here. So, okay, you can certainly pivot and make the move to Johnny Bryant if you want. You know, you would have to have faith. The other thing with Johnny Bryant is, and this is no shade to Johnny Bryant, but like, who out there really knows what his basketball philosophy is, right? Like, he was an assistant coach under Quinn Snyder. The Jazz shot a ton of threes. Quinn Snyder was famous for having like a lot of really complex and creative schemes. Now, maybe Johnny Bryant, working with him and obviously having his own basketball philosophy and journey, has maybe some of his own schemes, or maybe wants to take some that were really successful in Utah, and that could be great. But there's really no telling what type of coach he's going to be. So if you entrust him with this Knicks roster for his first head coaching job, and you haven't figured out how to either get the best out of Randle, RJ, and Brunson as a trio, or move on from one of Randle or Barrett, or figure out how you can trade some of the other players, maybe to just improve on the margins a little bit, you're really setting up Johnny Bryant to fail, to be honest. And that's just going to continue the merry-go-round of executives and coaches that we've seen with the Knicks for the past 20 years. And so I honestly agree 100% with what you're saying. This team is most likely going to look different after the trade deadline. It's just a matter of who and where. And that, to be honest, is probably going to be the most fascinating thing going forward, apart from, whether they can get some consistent results in.
Yeah, you said it. Johnny Bryant's philosophy and what his system will be, what his style would be, is going to be, I think, one of the most intriguing things if the Knicks do go that route sometime this season. But like you mentioned, I don't know that there's much that he could do other than shifting some minutes and shifting some rotations, because I just think long term there's just a roster issue here. And I don't know that the whole, first of all, I've always said there's two things. You got to figure out the Obi Julius thing, and you have to figure out the Julius RJ thing.
Right.
I think you can make a case out of those three guys, two guys got to go long term. Like you can make that case, or you can make the case that you need one of those three who is the biggest, the biggest negative out of those three, or the biggest guy that you think can hold the team back, or you need to just get rid of just to create an opportunity for someone else and see if that combination works. But I think when you look at those three players, you got to figure that out because with Obi, the lottery pick situation, and with RJ and Randle, it's been what, 3 years now, and I just don't think that's a good fit long term. And I don't even know if Johnny Bryant is too fond of Randle or Obi. Like, we don't know what he thinks about this roster. As an assistant coach, he's gonna say one thing, but when you're asked to be the head coach and now you're on the microscope, you better believe your opinions of certain players may differ when you're on the assistant head coaching seat there now when you're the head coach, because now you want to be able to give yourself the opportunity to coach a roster to your style. And he was brought in here, I think, to gain that experience and be next to a Tom Thibodeau. But you can't tell me that they're both similar in style. Not from the backgrounds, I don't think so, because he's coming from a background of high offense, high octane offense, and a lot of threes. Thibodeau's, background is low scoring and defense. So I don't know that there's a mix there in terms of what Johnny Bryant's style is and what is his personnel liking to a team. But we'll see how that goes. We're gonna go to, I think we have a soundbite here of Jalen Brunson. Thought it was interesting post game. Whenever we're ready to play that soundbite, the soundbite here. I know JD, his man's didn't play. Wade Chappelle. No, I'm good, man. I'm all right. I'm all right with Cam not playing.
No, you approach every game the same with the same amount of intensity, but coming off of Saturday's performance, second game of back-to-back, what was the feeling around the group coming into this one? Where I'm not saying you needed a win, but you wanted to kind of get off the shine.
No, we needed a win for sure. I'll be honest with you, we needed a win. I think for us, how we responded when they cut that lead in the first half, starting the third quarter well, there's all signs for us that we're moving in the right direction. But we can't just be satisfied with what we did tonight, and it's not going to just roll over, and it's not just going to happen again the next night, our next game. We got to make it happen, and we should continue to create habits that allow us to do that.
Jalen Brunson there, saying that he said we needed a win for sure. I'll be honest. So I'll be honest with you. We needed a win, and he's been very very savvy in the way that he's handled the media. But I think that was a cryptic way of saying, man, if we would have lost tonight, I don't know if I would have came up here and defended Tibbs the way I did last game. So we can go now to the Julius Randle. We have I think a soundbite from Julius Randle, where he had something, I guess, funny to say.
Yes, yesterday the defense, and then today. What was the adjustment? Was it just? What would you say? That was the key. But Garland and Donovan, you guys kind of held them.
The travels,
not great shooting.
The season high.
What did you see from them?
Good job of competing on the ball, but fighting over screens, making it tough, forcing them in the bench.
Knicks have, they have a tough game next game against the Hawks. As we close to wrap up this show, just take a moment, guys. Hit that thumbs up button for your boy. Hit them likes up. We have now 1,300 in the chat, about 443 likes. Let's get it to 700. Well, you know what? I'm gonna go CP. CP likes to say 1,000. Let's get 1,000 likes before we wrap up this show. Just take a few seconds, hit the likes up, help us with the algorithms. It's very important that you share, you like, the stream so that we continue to get pushed by YouTube. And I don't know if that's CP on the chat saying no Cam tonight, wants to rub it in. CP, yes, no Cam tonight. I know you saw the game. I know you looked at the box score. Stop playing with me because I know you do that every time you want to hit me up to rub in the fact that Cam either didn't play a good game or in the case of tonight, did not get in the game at all. So as we wrap up the show, let me get into some super chats here. Where do we have it? Okay. $10 super chat from First Lady of Sports. The Knicks guards constantly get beaten off the dribble, which causes the team to be unbalanced when defending the three-point shots. I don't know if I necessarily myself agree with that, Jeff, because it just seems like the scheme with Tibbs that we've mentioned earlier is to pack the paint. And so if that's a scheme, there's been some videos flowing on Twitter where you can see, especially with the pressure that Thibodeau has faced, there's been a lot of articles and references over the last 24 hours of his scheme. And, is it more the players? Is it more the scheme? Is it the coach? Like, what is the root cause of the defense? Surprisingly, the defense has been the issue. One of the main issues with the team this season. Do you agree with that super chat that, I guess when you look at, Jalen Brunson's not a great defender and things of that nature, but do you think the defense is mainly a scheme thing or a personnel thing or both?
I think it's a tough question to answer, but like to go back to, I guess the super chat's earlier point, I feel like it's kind of something related to something you mentioned earlier. The point of attack is really hard to defend because most teams just throw a screen up at you right when the ball handler is passes half court or whatever, right? So, I understand that it's easy to think and see, our guards get blown by, but I don't think that's always the case. I think there's a screen, they get caught up in the screen, and typically what Tibbs has done this year is he wants the point of attack defender to basically trail the ball handler and, kind of follow them from the back and push them off the three-point line while Mitchell Robinson is in drop coverage, right? So he's giving the ball handler room to kind of manipulate and move past in, and they want to try and force a long two or a contested shot at the rim. They're trying to play percentages. I do think I think this is the issue with Tibbs. Sometimes he does that against really, really talented guards like a Dame Lillard or a Steph. Like I remember last year in the playoffs, people were really killing teams for playing drop coverage against Steph. So I think when you see Tibbs doing that against really, really talented guards and maybe, or let's say a guard that has a really hot game going, like they have 20 or 30, we need to execute an occasional double, or we got to hedge maybe off the screen to try and stop their drives into the paint and then force them to give the ball up. So to a certain extent, I do agree that I think Tibbs does need to be more flexible with his defensive schemes. I don't think we have like really great perimeter defenders, so I do think there's a personnel issue there as well. Ultimately, I'm not going to sit here and just sit on the fence. I think if Tibbs, was a little bit more flexible with the schemes, or to something you said earlier, template coaching, I think if he was a little bit more game specific, which is crazy that I'm saying this about a Tom Thibodeau who has the reputation of being one of the best game managers, preparers, like whatever you want to say, right? But I do think sometimes when we watch these games and we look at 48 minutes, I'm left feeling like, but wait a minute, we just defended that same pick and roll the same way every possession, we just didn't close out, and if that's the case, I do think there's kind of an issue with coaching there, because it shouldn't have to be the same way every time, and you should be able to give the offense different looks on multiple possessions so that they don't really know what to expect from you. Teams hit us with zone. all the time, and that seems to mess us up. Why can't we implement that a little bit here and there if we want to interrupt the team's flow or something like that? So I do think schematically, and I've been a big Tibbs defender, but I have to admit that there is something left to be desired there.
Yeah, and also because some people can say that you do have enough personnel here to have a better defense than what you've displayed this year, and it's just figuring out the combinations to put them together, right? Like you have, for example, you could have 48 minutes of Jericho Sims and Mitchell Robinson. Instead, you go Mitchell Robinson and Hartenstein. And Hartenstein, to me, has been very slow to react when he's attacked on defense. So that right there could is a weakness. You have Cam, IQ, Grimes, Deuce. You have 4 defenders there. Can we get 3 on the floor at certain points in the game? But no, you either get one or the other, right? So I think it's a combination of both, where it is the coach, it is a personnel, because to me, and you said it at the beginning of the show, Jeff, this season, if this is the roster, it's going to come down to Randle and RJ. I know that Jalen Brunson is the $100 million guy, but you even see when he has these 30-point games, the game against the Memphis Grizzlies, like it's just not going to end up being enough. It's going to be enough against the Pistons. It's going to be enough against the bad teams. It's not going to be enough against the upper echelon teams of the league, because you're going to be tested defensively in a league of so much offense. So I think from that standpoint, it is personnel, because I think RJ has regressed defensively. I don't think Randle has ever been a great defender. I just think he played well because it was a contract year. And the Knicks had good perimeter defense that year with Elfrid Payton and Reggie Bullock. So he our wings were helped that season. But in the end, I also think a lot of it is coaching as well, because how many defenders, when you look around the NBA, every team doesn't have 12 active defenders.
Yeah.
Every team has weak defenders. Every team. And the top defensive teams figure out a scheme, and they figure out combinations to best put their personnel out there. So I would say it could be a combination of both. And we go to the next super chat here as we wrap up the show. $5 super chat from MRD Wow. Tibbs' offense is bad. We don't have a superstar player to just let them create while we struggle against good teams. And I think, is that it? I think that is it. Let me see. I want to make sure I have all the super chats. That's that. First Lady of Sports. Yep. And I think that's it. Guys, thank you very much for tuning into this show. As we wrap up the show, just want to let you know, just hit your thumbs up button for your boys. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you support the channel KnicksFanTV here. We're closing in on 58,000 subscribers. So please hit that like button. Please, subscribe. The Knicks, play the Atlanta Hawks on Wednesday on ESPN. Jeff, what is your prediction for that game? Who do you have winning? And give me a score prediction before we wrap up the show.
Wow. So if I didn't hear about some of the locker room turmoil that's been going on with Atlanta, I would have felt pretty confident in saying that the Hawks would win that game. I do think we've got a little bit of good vibes going into this game. Like I said, I don't think everything we did tonight is sustainable. The Hawks are not going to come in here and shoot 30% or whatever it is. But I do.
They definitely not.
I think we got a good chance to win. I might eat my words here, but I'm gonna say we win this game. I'm gonna say we win this game 125 to 119, something like that.
125 to 119. So the Knicks get back into the scoring ways. I'm gonna say, I think the Knicks are gonna lose this game. I just think, Jeff, that if he goes back to Rose and he goes back to the whole, playing Julius, 38 minutes, and he doesn't take advantage of the defensive energy that he received tonight, and he dials it back to the same rotation. I just don't think that's going to bode well against this Atlanta team. At the Garden, Trey is coming in. You have two dynamic guards, and there's just a bad energy. I know they won tonight 90-81, but it's just a strange game, man. I don't know what I learned about tonight really in the grand scheme of things, because you're just not going to see 92-81 scored games in the NBA. So what do I make of tonight? I don't know. I guess is wait and see. But, I'm going to say the Hawks win 116 111, Atlanta Hawks on ESPN. And yeah, and then we'll be back to having this whole Tibbs talk about whether the Knicks are going to make a move or not. And if they lose that next game, it is going to be, to me, a disappointment, because you don't win this game against the Cavs and then go and lose the next game as the Hawks. The Hawks are pretty up and down so far.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens there. Guys, thank you for tuning into the show. We're going to wrap up this show. But before we do, just want to make sure that Manscaped, the show is presented by Manscaped. Listen, man, I got my travel bag. I'm ready to go. I don't know about you, Jeff. We're going into the winter time. So make sure you got the travel bag. I got the lawnmower 4.0 inside the bag. I got the ball deodorant. If he or she's waiting for you downstairs and you got a date going, I got the ball deodorant if you're not going to shower. Right? No testimonials, but make sure you hit manscaped.com. It's a lot of products there. The only thing is, make sure you go and you, what is it? KFTV for 20% off shipping. KFTV for 20% off shipping. There might be an announcement this week as well, but I'll leave that for CP, the franchise, to announce that. I'm not sure we're ready for that, but thank you guys for tuning in. Salute to the chat. Salute to the mods. Salute to TM and all the mods. I'm not able to see the chat right now, but definitely want to salute to the fans and everyone that tuned in tonight. Over 1,300 in the chat. We have over 500 likes. Jeff, it was a pleasure. It was my first time hosting a show with you, so I got to see some of your perspectives. And yeah, guys, let's win on Wednesday against the Atlanta Hawks. New York Knicks win 92-81. Peace.